Hey Moon Jade family. Thank you so much for your love and support. Please like, subscribe, and share. It's a simple way to keep our stories coming. I couldn't do this without you. Thank you for being here. Now, grab a seat and let's continue the story. The laughter of children echoed softly through the old homeless shelter, mingling with the faint hum of a ceiling fan that had seen better days. The air smelled faintly of bleach, baby powder, and something deeper, the unmistakable scent of hope mixed with heartbreak. Zahara Williams stood in the middle of the crowded hall, her hands gently adjusting the scarf of a young mother seated on a worn plastic chair. "Hold your head up, sweetheart," Zahara said softly, her voice warm and steady. "You're safe here. You're stronger than you think." The woman's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she nodded. Zahara recognized that look, the desperate, terrified expression of someone who had lost everything. It was the same look she'd seen in the mirror 6 years ago, the night her life had shattered. Once upon a time, Zahara had been a wife too. A woman deeply in love, devoted to a man who promised her the world and then burned it down around her. Rui. His name was still a raw wound, even now. He hadn't just left her. He had discarded her violently, throwing her out with nothing but the clothes on her back and the crushing weight of betrayal. Zahara had wandered the freezing streets for days, her heart breaking while strangers looked at her with pity or disgust. By the time she'd stumbled into this very shelter, she'd been little more than a ghost, hungry, numb, and ready to disappear forever. And then he had found her. Liang Wei. The memory of his calm, steady gaze still sent warmth through her chest. Unlike Rui, Liang hadn't seen her as trash. He'd seen a woman worth saving, worth loving. He had rebuilt her piece by piece, with patience and devotion, until Zahara could stand on her own again. Now, 6 years later, she was his wife, the mother of 3 beautiful children, and the heart of a home she'd once only dreamed about. But she never forgot where she came from. That was why she kept returning to the shelter, to remind herself, and others, that even the most broken lives could be mended. "Miss Zahara," one of the volunteers called, breaking through her thoughts. "We're short on blankets. Could you check the storage room?" "Of course," she said with a small smile, smoothing down her cream blouse before heading toward the back. She was halfway there when the doors to the shelter burst open with a rush of cold autumn air. Zahara turned instinctively, her smile fading into something sharp and brittle. It was him. Rui stood in the doorway, tall and immaculately dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. His presence filled the room like a shadow, commanding attention the way it always had. His dark eyes swept the room with a mixture of disdain and arrogance, until they landed on Zahara. For a heartbeat, the world fell silent. Her pulse roared in her ears, memories crashing over her like a wave. The nights she'd cried herself to sleep. The harsh words. The final, brutal argument that had ended with her being shoved out of their shared apartment and into the cold. Rui's lips curled into a slow, mocking smile. Well, he drawled, his Mandarin-accented English as smooth and cutting as a blade. "If it isn't Zahara, still playing the savior of the lost and pitiful, I see." The other volunteers glanced between them uneasily, sensing the tension but not daring to interfere. Zahara forced herself to straighten her spine, refusing to let him see her shake. "What are you doing here, Rui?" she asked coolly. "Me?" He laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. "I came to drop off a little invitation." He reached into the pocket of his expensive suit and withdrew a thick ivory envelope, embossed with gold lettering. He extended it toward her with exaggerated politeness, his eyes glittering with malice. "Consider this your formal invitation to my wedding. You know, since you were once relevant to me." Zahara's stomach twisted. Wedding. The word felt like a slap. Rui leaned closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "I thought it might amuse you to see what a real woman looks like walking down the aisle. Not the pathetic excuse of a wife you were." The words hit their mark, sharp and merciless. For a moment, Zahara couldn't breathe. Her fingers trembled as she accepted the envelope, not because she wanted it, but because she refused to let it fall to the floor like trash. "Enjoy your little charity work, Zahara," Rui sneered, straightening. "It suits you. Though honestly, I'm surprised anyone would still put up with you." And with that, he turned on his heel and strode out, leaving a trail of expensive cologne and destruction in his wake. For a long moment, Zahara just stood there, the invitation heavy in her hand. The hall buzzed around her, voices distant and muffled, like she was underwater. Rui's words burrowed under her skin, threatening to reopen old wounds she thought had healed. Why does he still have this power over me? She wondered bitterly. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Zahara forced her feet to move. She couldn't fall apart here, not in front of the people who looked up to her. She tucked the envelope into her bag and pasted on a brittle smile as she finished her duties for the day. That evening, Zahara's Rolls Royce glided smoothly through the gates of their sprawling estate, a stark contrast to the gritty streets she'd just left behind. As she stepped into the marble-floored foyer, 3 small voices greeted her at once. Mama! Her children, 2 girls and a boy, all under 6, ran toward her with gleeful abandon. Zahara dropped to her knees, gathering them into her arms and inhaling their familiar, comforting scent. This was her real life. Not Rue. Not the past. Welcome home, a deep, steady voice said. Zahara looked up to see Liang Wei descending the sweeping staircase, his presence calm and commanding. He was dressed casually in a black silk shirt, but there was nothing casual about the way his dark eyes scanned her face, instantly sensing her unease. You've been crying, he said softly, coming to kneel beside her. His thumb brushed gently beneath her eye. What happened? Zahara hesitated, her heart pounding. She didn't want to tell him. Didn't want Rui's poison to seep into this safe, beautiful life they'd built. But Liang's gaze was patient, unwavering. He had always been her rock, her safe harbor. Finally, she drew in a trembling breath and whispered, Rui came to the shelter today. Liang's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. What did he want? Zahara swallowed, pulling the envelope from her bag. He invited me to his wedding. And he said things. Cruel things. Her voice broke, and Liang's arms wrapped around her instantly, gathering her and the children close. Shoo, he murmured into her hair. He cannot hurt you anymore, Zahara. You are not the woman he destroyed. You are my wife. The mother of my children. The queen of this home. Tears welled in Zahara's eyes, but this time they were from love, not pain. I don't want to go, she whispered fiercely. I don't want to see him again. I just want to forget he exists. Liang leaned back slightly, his hands framing her face. No, he said firmly, his tone brooking no argument. You will go. Not for him, for you. You will show him that the woman he threw away has risen higher than he could ever reach. Zahara's breath caught. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Liang's lips curved into a slow, confident smile. You don't need to be strong, my love, he murmured. That's why you have me. And in that moment, Zahara knew, whatever storm was coming, she wouldn't face it alone. Zahara stood motionless in front of the grand floor-to-ceiling mirror, her breath caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. Her stylist flitted around her like a hummingbird, smoothing the deep crimson silk of her gown, perfecting every curve, every line. The woman in the mirror didn't look like someone who had once slept on the cold floor of a homeless shelter. She didn't look like the discarded wife Rue had abandoned without a shred of dignity. She looked like royalty. But inside, Zahara's heart quaked. Her fingers twisted together, palms damp. No matter how dazzling the dress, no matter how far she'd come, she couldn't silence the voice in her head that whispered, he will always see you as that broken, worthless woman he left behind. The heavy door creaked open and the sound of joyous laughter poured in. Her 3 children raced into the room, dressed in their tiny designer outfits. Mama, look at me. Aiden, her eldest, strutted proudly in his perfectly tailored miniature tuxedo. Daddy said I look like a boss. Zahara's lips curved into a trembling smile as she crouched to his level. You look like a prince, baby. She kissed his forehead, breathing in the warm, familiar scent of him. The twins, Lila and Suri, twirled like little ballerinas in their pastel dresses, giggling uncontrollably. Suri clutched Zahara's hand. Are we really going to a big party, Mama? Will there be cake? Zahara's throat tightened. Yes, love, she whispered, hugging them close. There will be cake, and you'll stay right by Mama and Daddy the whole time. As their laughter faded into the next room with the nanny, Zahara straightened, only to find Liang leaning against the doorway, watching her. Her husband's gaze was a flame that licked over her skin, slow and deliberate. He was dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored suit that hugged his powerful frame, his black hair perfectly styled, his presence commanding yet intimate all at once. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them thickened, charged with the quiet electricity of two souls who knew each other's every scar, every dream. Finally, Liang crossed the room in 3 measured strides. "You're trembling," he said softly, his deep voice wrapping around her like velvet. He reached for her hands, his thumbs brushing soothing circles over her skin. "You're thinking about Rui." Zahara's throat worked as she swallowed. I don't understand why you want me to go, Liang. Why relive that nightmare? Why stand in front of the man who," her voice cracked, "the man who shattered me?" Liang's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with a storm she'd only seen when someone threatened their family. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze. "No," he said, low and fierce. "That man does not get to define you. You are not broken, Zahara. You never were. You are mine, and together, we are unshakable." Hot tears welled in her eyes. "But what if he humiliates me again?" A dark, dangerous smile curved Liang's lips. "Let him try." His voice was silk wrapped around steel. "Everything Rui clings to, his position, his wealth, his pride, belongs to me. Tomorrow, he will learn that lesson. And you," he leaned closer, his breath ghosting over her ear. "You will walk into that hall like the queen you are, and every single person there will bow without you lifting a finger." The tension snapped, pulling her into him before she realized she'd moved. Zahara pressed her face against his chest, his steady heartbeat anchoring her. Liang's arms encircled her, strong and protective, his hands sliding slowly down her back. "You saved me, Liang," she whispered. "You gave me a life when I thought mine was over." "No," he murmured, tilting her head back to look at her. "You saved yourself. I only gave you the space to rise." Their eyes locked, and the heat between them surged. Liang lowered his mouth to hers, claiming her in a kiss that was slow and deep, a vow written in fire. When they finally broke apart, Zahara's breath was ragged, her fears momentarily drowned in the passion blazing between them. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, his forehead resting against hers. "Remember this, you are not going there alone. I will be at your side, and Rui will never hurt you again." The following afternoon, a low purr rumbled through the estate as a sleek black Rolls Royce Phantom waited in the circular driveway. The children gasped when they saw it, their little hands pressing to the windows. "Mama, this car looks like a spaceship." Aiden cried, wide-eyed. Liang smirked, his hand resting possessively at the small of Zahara's back. "Only the best for my family," he said, his voice carrying a subtle edge that sent shivers down her spine. Zahara slid into the plush leather seat beside him, her gown spilling around her like liquid fire. As the car pulled away, the city lights glittered in the distance, and her pulse raced faster with each passing block. Liang's phone buzzed. He checked the message briefly, his lips curving into a faint, dangerous smile. "Everything is ready, sir," the text read. He locked the screen and slipped the phone away, his arm coming around Zahara's shoulders. "Don't be afraid," he said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Tonight isn't just about showing Rui what he lost. It's about giving you the closure you deserve." Zahara leaned into him, inhaling his clean, masculine scent, her body relaxing despite the storm inside her. "Promise me one thing," she whispered. "No matter what happens, you'll stay by my side." Liang's fingers tightened gently on her waist. "Always," he vowed. "Even if the whole world burns, I'll hold you through the flames." When the Rolls Royce pulled up to the glittering venue, a hush fell over the arriving guests. Heads turned, whispers spreading like wildfire as Zahara stepped out first, radiant and untouchable, her children following close behind. For a heartbeat, Zahara felt Rui's ghost hovering. But Liang's hand slid into hers, grounding her, reminding her who she was now. "Ready, my love?" he asked, his dark eyes glinting with pride and something more dangerous. She exhaled, lifting her chin. "Yes," she said. "Let's end this." The wedding hall glittered like a jewel box under the glow of crystal chandeliers. Gold drapes framed the walls, delicate orchids lined the aisle, and the air was thick with the scent of wealth and ambition. Guests mingled in their finest attire, glasses of champagne in hand, laughter floating on the notes of a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Rui stood at the altar in a pristine white suit, his smug smile wider than ever as he clasped the hands of his soon-to-be bride, Lin Meilin. Cameras flashed, catching every perfect angle of the couple. To anyone watching, Rui seemed like a man who had it all: wealth, love, and success. But he was blissfully unaware that the past he had tried to bury was about to return like a storm. Outside the grand doors, Zahara's heart pounded in her chest. She stood at the foot of the staircase, one manicured hand gripping the handle of her designer clutch, the other smoothing over the soft fabric of her deep crimson gown. The dress hugged her curves with unapologetic elegance, the high slit revealing just enough leg to make a statement. I am no longer the woman you broke. Behind her, 3 little faces peeked out from the luxurious interior of the Rolls Royce, their eyes wide with excitement. Mommy, are we going to see the bad men? Her eldest son, Lucas, asked, tilting his head with innocent curiosity. Yes, Zahara said softly, kneeling to adjust his tiny bow tie. Her voice was steady, though inside she trembled. But remember what we talked about. We're here to show him that no one can take away who we are. Lucas puffed out his chest, nodding. Daddy said we're a strong family. At the mention of her husband, Zahara glanced over her shoulder. Liang stood there like a king, his black tailored suit sharp enough to cut, his presence radiating raw, commanding power. His dark eyes were locked on her, filled with quiet devotion and pride. The corners of his lips curved upward just slightly, a private smile meant only for her. You look breathtaking, he said, his deep, smooth voice rolling over her like a warm caress. Let them see what they lost. Let them all see who you are. Zahara's throat tightened. 6 years ago, she'd been broken, discarded like trash on the streets by Rui, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Then Liang had found her, seen her worth when she couldn't, and built her back piece by piece. He hadn't just given her wealth, he had given her dignity, love, and a future. She reached for his hand, squeezing it. I couldn't do this without you. You'll never have to. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, and for a moment, it felt like they were the only 2 people in the world. The massive doors swung open as they entered, and conversation inside the hall stuttered to a halt. Heads turned. Gasps rippled through the crowd. There she was, the woman everyone had mocked and whispered about, no longer the abandoned wife, no longer the pitiful figure at the shelter. Zahara glided into the room like royalty, her children trailing behind like a living testament to the life she'd built. Rui's smug expression froze. His jaw slackened, and his grip on Maline's hand faltered. Zahara, he stammered, eyes darting between her and Liang. Surprised to see me, Rui? Zahara's voice rang clear and strong across the room. She held her chin high, her every movement elegant, deliberate. I came to return the invitation you so graciously handed me. A murmur ran through the guests. Rui's shock quickly morphed into cruel laughter. What's this? You dressed up, borrowed a car, and dragged your children here just to make a scene. He gestured dismissively. Pathetic. You've always been desperate to outshine me, Zahara. But look at you. Nothing's changed. You're still beneath me. Zahara's lips curved into a cool smile. Oh, Rui, everything has changed. You just haven't caught up yet. Rui forced a laugh, trying to recover. Come now, cousin, he said, spreading his hands. This is my wedding day. Surely we don't need to involve business matters. Liang arched a brow, his tone deceptively calm. Business matters? You insult my wife, my children, and parade your foolishness before the world, and you think this is only about business. Gasps rippled through the hall as guests realized who Zahara truly was. Liang Wei's wife. Who are you? Meline snapped, glaring at Zahara. She looped her arm possessively through Rui's. Why are you ruining our wedding? Liang finally stepped forward, his presence a dark, commanding shadow beside Zahara's radiance. I am Liang Chen, he said smoothly, his deep voice sending a shiver through the room. His eyes, sharp as blades, fixed on Rui. And this woman is my wife. The room erupted into chaos. Gasps, whispers, and even a few screams filled the air as realization dawned. Rui's face turned ghostly pale. Why your wife? Liang's expression didn't change, but his next words struck like lightning. Rui stumbled back a step, his face draining of color. Your wife. His voice cracked. This woman? She was nothing. She's beneath. Careful. Liang cut in, his voice razor sharp. One more word, and you won't even have breath left to regret it. Zahara stood silent, her hand clutching Liang's sleeve. 4 years, she had dreamed of this moment, not revenge, but vindication. Still, a part of her trembled, fearing Rui would twist everything, make her small again. Liang squeezed her hand once, steadying her. Liang turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying effortlessly across the ballroom. For those who don't know, Rui has been serving as general manager of one of my companies. I entrusted him with power, resources, and the reputation of my name. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Even Lila, Rui's fiancée, looked shocked. And yet, Liang continued, his voice cold as ice. He has repaid that trust with lies, arrogance, and disgrace. As of this moment, Rui is no longer general manager. Rui's mouth fell open. You can't do this. Not here. Not in front of. Liang's glare silenced him instantly. Oh, I can, Liang said smoothly. In fact, you should be grateful. Because I considered cutting ties completely. But instead, I've chosen a more fitting role for you. He let the silence stretch, then deliver the final blow. From this day forward, Rui will serve as a cleaner in the very building he once controlled. The room exploded in gasps and murmurs. Lila's face twisted in fury and disgust. You told me you were powerful, she hissed, stepping away from Rui as though he carried a disease. You're nothing but a failure. No. Rui lunged toward her, desperate. Lila, please, don't leave me. You don't understand. But she wrenched her arm free, her voice sharp and cold. I will not marry a liar and a beggar. Enjoy mopping floors. With that, she stormed out, leaving Rui trembling and alone. The guests scattered, whispering furiously. Some were already snapping pictures, eager to spread the scandal across social media. Rui dropped to his knees before Liang, his pride shredded. Please, he begged, tears streaking his face. Don't do this to me. We're family. I'll do anything, just don't take everything away. Liang looked down at him with icy disdain. You took everything from Zahara, he said, his voice quiet but deadly. You left her to die in the streets. You thought she would never rise again. He paused, his gaze shifting to Zahara, softening for just a moment. But she rose higher than you ever could. Zahara turned to her husband, awe and love swelling in her chest. You didn't tell me you owned his company. Liang's gaze softened as he cupped her face. I didn't want revenge to be the reason you stood tall today. You did that on your own, my love. His thumb brushed a tear from her cheek. I just wanted to make sure no one could ever hurt you again. Her lips trembled. You've given me everything, Liang. A home, a family, a second chance. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. And I'll keep giving, Zahara. As long as I breathe, you'll never face this world alone. Their children ran up then, Lucas clutching Zahara's skirt. Mommy, did we win? He asked, his voice full of innocent excitement. Zahara laughed through her tears, hugging her little boy tightly. Yes, baby. We won. She glanced back one last time at Rui, broken, alone, and surrounded by the whispers of the crowd. Let him drown in his own regret, she thought, turning away. With her husband's hand in hers and her children by her side, Zahara walked out of that hall, not just a survivor, but a queen. The sun dipped low behind the Wei estate, painting the sprawling gardens in strokes of gold and rose. The sound of fountains mingled with the laughter of children, a melody that carried across the peaceful evening air. Zahara stood on the balcony of their master bedroom, wrapped in a soft silk robe, her hands resting on the cool marble rail. The breeze brushed against her skin, bringing with it the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the gardens below. It had been 2 weeks since Rui's wedding, the night when the past had been buried for good. The scandal had dominated every headline. Power play at the altar, billionaire Liang Wei demotes general manager mid-wedding. From homeless to heiress, Zahara's triumphant return shocks society. Everywhere they went, people stared in awe at the couple, whispering about the infamous scene. But Zahara didn't care about gossip or fame. What mattered most was the peace she felt now, a peace she hadn't known in years. For the first time since Rui had discarded her like trash, she was completely free. Mommy, come play with us. The cheerful voice of her daughter, Lily, rose from the gardens below. Zahara leaned over the balcony to see her 3 children racing through the grass, their tiny feet pounding over the manicured lawn. Lucas, her eldest, led the pack with protective determination, while the younger 2 giggled uncontrollably behind him. Zahara's heart swelled at the sight. My whole world, right there. Strong arms suddenly wrapped around her waist, pulling her against a solid, familiar chest. "You're leaning too far," came Liang's deep, velvety voice, tinged with teasing warning. "I can't afford to lose you, Zahara." A soft laugh escaped her lips. "Always so protective," she murmured, relaxing into his embrace. His lips brushed the curve of her neck, sending a shiver down her spine. "Always," he vowed. "You and those little troublemakers down there are my entire life." Zahara turned in his arms, her hands sliding over his strong shoulders. The fading sunlight caught his sharp features, softening the usual power in his face to reveal the man who had saved her, not just with wealth, but with love. "I still can't believe it sometimes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. 6 years ago, I had nothing. I was nothing. And now." Liang silenced her gently with a finger against her lips. "Don't ever say that," he said firmly, his dark eyes locking with hers. "You were always everything, Zahara. You just needed someone to remind you." Her breath caught, and tears shimmered in her eyes. "I love you, Liang Wei." His lips curved into a rare, tender smile. "And I," he murmured, kissing her forehead, "love you more than words will ever hold." Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Zahara and Liang sat on the patio beneath a canopy of stars. The estate was quiet except for the gentle hum of night creatures and the trickling of distant fountains. "Do you ever think about Rui?" Liang asked casually, though his tone carried an edge. Zahara hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "Not in anger anymore. Just pity. He destroyed himself the moment he threw me away." Liang's gaze darkened. "And now he's reaping what he sowed." As if on cue, Zahara's phone lit up with a news alert. A headline glowed on the screen. "Former General Manager Rui spotted cleaning floors at Wei Corporation headquarters." Zahara blinked, then chuckled softly, setting the phone face down. "I suppose karma finally caught up with him." Liang's smirk was pure steel. "No, I caught up with him. No one hurts my wife and walks away untouched." Her heart fluttered at the fierce protectiveness in his voice. She reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "And no one will ever hurt you either. We're a team, Liang. We face the world together." When they returned to their room, Zahara slipped out of her robe, revealing a flowing satin slip dress. Liang's breath hitched, his gaze darkening with raw desire. "You are a vision," he said hoarsely, pulling her close. She smiled, her hands resting over his heart. "And you are my safe place." Their lips met in a kiss that was slow, deep, and full of promise. It wasn't just passion, it was love forged through pain, rebuilt with trust, and sealed with devotion. The next morning, Zahara woke to the sound of her children's giggles and Liang's low, warm voice reading them a story in the playroom. She lay still for a moment, letting the peace of it wash over her. She had once been alone, discarded, and broken. But now, she had a husband who adored her, children who filled her days with joy, and a home that overflowed with love. As sunlight spilled across the room, Zahara whispered, almost to herself, "This is my happily ever after." And for the first time, she truly believed it. The lobby of the Wei Corporation headquarters gleamed with polished marble floors. Rui knelt with a mop in hand, his back aching, sweat stinging his eyes. Executives passed by without sparing him a glance, the same people who had once bowed to him when he held power. On the massive digital screen overhead, a news broadcast played. The image of Zahara appeared, radiant and poised, standing beside Liang as they announced a new charity initiative for homeless families. Their 3 children were with them, smiling and happy. Rui froze, his hands trembling. He stared at Zahara's glowing face, the life she now had, and the man who stood proudly at her side. In that moment, regret consumed him like a poison. He had discarded a queen. And now, he would spend the rest of his days cleaning the floors of the empire she ruled.